member of our Committee on the Present Danger of China by the name of George Racely, who's going to take an independent and American view of some of those same topics. He is these days the editor-in-chief of Conservative HQ, Richard Viguery's wonderful online newsletter. He brings to that position a wealth of experience in politics, having been involved in some 300 campaigns, and service in the executive branch, in the office of the vice president, and on Capitol Hill in senior positions as well. George is the man we've turned to talk about what a defeat for Iran would mean in terms of a defeat as well for the Chinese Communist Party, and some related topics as to whether we're going to get to either of those outcomes, looking at America First, looking at a sort of schism that Pesach Walicki touched on, inside MAGA, the America Great Again team, and Trump's choice as to how to proceed. Let's go to the video, in this case with George Racely, please, also taped on our show today.
I think it's important to recognize that the Red China is Iran's #1 trading partner. And, about 68% of Iran's exports are oil and related products. 35% goes to China. That is a big chunk of the Chinese oil supply. And it's also a supply that's more or less off the books because of sanctions. And so it comes to them at a discount. And it would be very discomforting for the communist Chinese economy to lose that discounted oil supply. And if a democratic, peaceful regime were to replace the mullahs, it would actually help stabilize world oil prices at a lower level, because it would put the Iranian oil supply back on the world market legitimately. And that supply would, of course, as we learned in Economics 101, more supply, lower price. And so there are a lot of benefits there. Additionally, the Chinese have a lot of interchange with the Islamic Republic on matters of terrorism support, all kinds of domestic security arrangements, weapons, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of benefit of getting rid of the Islamic Republic in terms of weakening Red China.
And obviously the Chinese are, as you know so well, at least planning for aggression against Taiwan. Would your calculation, George, be that if an ally like Iran goes away, that will induce the Chinese to be less aggressive, or do you think they might be more so against Taiwan and us, for that matter?
Probably President Trump's greatest folly is waiting. It gives the theocracy 2 weeks to continue to work on their nuclear weapons. It gives them 2 weeks to further harden wherever those weapons are stored. It gives them 2 weeks to take out potential leaders of a new democratic Iran. And it does nothing to enhance our position should we decide to go to war. And it also gives them 2 weeks to move things here in the United States that we know they have. We know they have hit squads here. We know they have terrorist cells here. And why we would give them 2 weeks to put those terrorist cells and hit squads into motion is astonishing. And I can only believe that, the internal debate in the White House is what has given President Trump pause. There's no real rational explanation for this. I mean, I think the president sees himself as a peacemaker, as a global figure for good, and that's part of his self-image, and I think it's blinded him to the reality that this needs to happen now, and that regime change is the only thing that's going to end Iran's nuclear weapons program.
You have extensive experience with political matters. Let me ask you, I've come to the conclusion that a prime factor in the president's sort of fixation with this idea of being the peacemaker is, shall we say, pressure, or at least the appeal of young people made up of a part of the MAGA movement. I've come to call this a children's crusade, in fact, as these kids who seemingly know nothing about, the realities of, the Middle East for the moment, among other things, are so insistently demanding that he stand down. Could you walk us through what this all means for the MAGA movement, as well as possibly this presidency?
I think there's a dichotomy that we have to recognize here, Frank. One is that there's this group of so-called influencers, people who have big followings on X and Facebook and so on and so forth. And they seem to be against any further involvement in the Middle East. They're completely disconnected from the reality that is demonstrated by polling. Every poll I've seen says that, upwards of 60%, in some polls it's 75% plus, that the United States needs to do whatever it takes to eliminate Iran's nuclear weapons program. And so we have these people with outside influence, but minimal understanding, I think, that have the president's ear, and that's a very unfortunate thing.
I want to turn next. Thank you, George, and thanks again to all of you for indulging me. To yet another of our guests on Securing America earlier in the week, a frequent contributor to these webinars, arguably one of the preeminent naval intelligence officers, certainly of our time, if not all time. His name is Captain James Fennell, United States Navy, retired. He left the Navy from the post of Chief of Intelligence and Information Operations at the U.S. Pacific Fleet. He has an extraordinary record of having warned about